Hello, listeners, past, present, and future. This is now actually Haddonfield Radio, and thank you all for tuning in and sticking through that horrible, horrific sound that you all had to tolerate there for what felt like 2 or 3 hours.
Oh my God.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, guys. But we're here.
I wish we could edit that out for posterity, but I don't think we can.
You know, maybe
Good
it gives
times.
everyone a good laugh.
Good times.
Anyway, welcome to the Happy Horror Days live special here at Haddonfield Radio.
Yeah, here we go. We figured we'd do this. We've had some fun times with the live streams we've done in the past. We did the Halloween one. We did the 45 Years of Terror Convention one.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought we'd come here during the holiday season and just hang out with you guys for a couple hours and talk movies and talk horror movies, right?
Yeah, we got movies to talk about, some of our favorites from the past year. And I got some Halloween comics that I wanted to talk to you guys about. We have some giveaways coming up later for Halloween 1, 2, and 3 DVD set from Scream Factory. So stay tuned later. We'll give you some details about how you can win those. And just sort of hang out, talk about the last year, kind of what we accomplished on the show a little bit and some of the things. And you know what? I actually kind of wanted to do a little sneak preview talk because I've been watching Nightmare on Elm Street 3 a lot, getting ready for the next episode. And I thought maybe we could just spend like 5 minutes talking a little bit about the glory that is Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
I think we can talk about whatever your little heart desires. No problem at all. Let's just say hello to a few of the people who have tuned in right now. We've got Mike Hatfield here, of course, and I just wanted to say hello and we love you.
Yes, happy you got the package, and I hope the shirt fits and that you enjoy everything that was in there. You have been a faithful listener, so you earned it.
And we've got Swaggy G all the way tuning in from Georgia. I love learning where you guys are from. That's always very, very exciting. We are right now broadcasting from Rhode Island, which some of you may not realize is actually one of the 50 states in the United States.
We kind of qualify.
But that's where we are right now. Let's say hello to H80? Oh, HB3 Electric. Just want to say hello and we love you. Spooky Halloween gal.
Of course. I'm
Come
glad
on.
you can make it. I was
We
getting a
love
little
you.
worried. She sounded a little iffy on Instagram, and I was like, ooh.
I wouldn't have blamed you if you had bailed on us with that harangue of horrifying sound that lasted literally hours at the beginning of this live
It
stream.
was 2 little check marks. I thought when we were doing our last one, I was trying to use this new software, which gives us the fancy titles and the music and all that stuff.
Fancy's one word for it.
And the whole thing crashed right before we went on, and we had to switch to basically the camera on the computer. So this time I thought I had all the bugs figured out, but apparently there were 2 more boxes to check.
Yeah, well, this is always a work in progress, what we're doing here. We're always trying new things and trying to make the experience that we bring you guys with these videos better each time. Obviously, we failed this time. But hopefully, as we go on and do more of these live streams as time goes on, things will get a little bit smoother. So thank you for hanging in there. And sorry for that horrible unprofessionalism at the beginning, but we'll move on past that.
Wow.
We've got a lot. Well, no, not you. You weren't unprofessional. Just the computer rebelled against us.
Sorry.
No, it wasn't you.
Yes,
No,
we're all good.
I didn't mean it that way.
Anyway.
So, what are we going to start with? What's the first thing? What's our first topic for today?
Well, let's start with the new movie. At least you recommended that I should check out, and I know it's on your list of definitely some of the best movies of 2023, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
It's the movie Nefarious, right?
The movie Nefarious. Maybe there's some of you out there who don't even know this movie exists. I think a lot of people, this
I had
slipped
no
under
idea.
a lot of
Yeah.
people's radars in 2023. It's certainly one of the better films I've seen. Now, before we started recording, Joe actually said to me, is this even like a horror movie? And I guess that is sort of questionable genre-wise. Before we continue, do you guys know the movie we're talking about? Nefarious. Have you guys heard of this film? It came out this year with it stars Sean Patrick Flanery, who's star of one of my all-time favorite movies, The Boondock Saints, the Troy Duffy movie, and its sequel, which I like a little bit less. But Sean Patrick Flanery is sort of the star of this one. And he's had sort of a kind of a rocky patch in his career, but he definitely came back in an unbelievable way in this movie. The thing about this movie is a lot of people missed it because there is a connotation sort of attached to this movie that it is a right-wing oriented, conservative culture oriented red state movie. And I just thought that was kind of very interesting to me that maybe a lot of people might have skipped it because they've heard that, and that Glenn Beck is not only associated with the production of the movie, but he actually is in the movie. But I actually listened to this podcast called the King Cast, which is a Stephen King oriented podcast. And one of the guests that's on there numerous times is one of my favorite contemporary horror authors, Stephen Graham Jones, who's as a little side note, you should definitely check out his book, My Heart is a Chainsaw, if you haven't already. It's really one of my favorite books of all time. But he is an indigenous Native American horror writer and a brilliant, brilliant writer with a very prolific output. But every time he's on different podcasts, I notice he'll bring up different horror movies he's been watching. And I always make notes of them and check them out. And in one of those Kingcast episodes, he mentioned Nefarious. So I immediately went to iTunes and watched it. And I was particularly sort of blown away by it. What about you?
Yeah, I will always say that Christian is much more, in tune with what's coming out and what's out there and what's good to see, and I take a lot of my cues on his recommendations. And so he said to watch it, and I had no idea going into it at all what it was going to be about. And it took like a few minutes for me to get sucked in, but then once I got sucked in, boy, was I sucked in. And then yeah, about like halfway through I start going, is this really a horror movie? I mean, it was suspenseful, and the themes it's talking about are very horror, but it's not your traditional horror movie in the terms of effects or makeup or
No,
gore or
this
blood
movie
or
is
any of that type of stuff.
it could have actually just been a play.
Yeah,
It,
I mean, it's mainly just two guys talking,
it's
but
just
it's
two
amazing.
actors on opposite sides of a table talking. But the general premise of the movie, if you guys are interested, the premise of the movie is about a court-appointed psychiatrist or a psychologist of some degree who has to go and into a death row facility to figure out whether someone that is scheduled for execution is mentally stable. Because in the state they're in, if you are deemed mentally unfit, then it is illegal to be executed in the state they're in. And I forget what state they're in.
Yeah,
But the characters,
yeah,
that
it's
is.
kind of doesn't even really matter at the end of the day.
And basically the idea is this guy that Sean Patrick Flannery plays, this character, claims that he is actually a demon that is possessing this man who's on death row, and so the psychiatrist has to go in and figure out whether or not this guy's claims.
I mean, he clearly seems like he's just trying to get off,
Right.
like come off as insane,
And,
right?
and the guy's had a history of manipulating other psychiatrists
Yeah.
and kind of like law enforcement officials in the past. So they just want to know once and for all if he's legitimately eligible to be executed.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens from there, I'm not going to say anymore. You just got to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's generally what's called like a two-hander, where you have these two actors. Like I said, it could be you could have done this on a stage.
And sometimes I feel like it feels like you're watching a play.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? The acting and the writing.
I just think it's one of my favorite performances of the year by Sean Patrick Flannery. I thought that he was really
amazing.
Brilliant in this movie.
Really, really good. Again, it took me a few minutes at first. He's a very exaggerated character in the way he speaks and moves and a lot of
The character is sort of switching between two personas. This demon that calls himself Nefarious and the vessel, the human vessel that is housing the demon, that is this guy that's on death row. And they're two very different characters.
Yeah.
So you could be dealing with a situation that's similar to like DID or dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. Or you could be dealing with someone who's legitimately possessed by a demon. And the film is generally ambiguous about it. Up until the last couple of scenes.
But at first it took me a while to sort of warm up to his, over the top sort of characterization there.
Right.
I was kind of like, ooh, this is a lot. This guy is a lot, and I was like, I don't know. And then you get sucked into what he's saying and the writing and what they're doing. And then you kind of, it fits what's going on. And it's great. It's, And even the guy he's playing opposite to, I can't think of the
I
actor's
can't.
name
I'm
right
sorry.
now.
Yeah, I blanked on the other actor's
But
name, and that's too bad because he's really good too.
and you know what? And that guy, he kept giving me Christopher Reeve,
Yeah, I could see that.
sort of vibes at times.
Let's see what his name is.
But
Let's
he's
give
like
him a
sort of the
shout out.
straight guy to this crazy guy and it again, same thing. It takes a while.
His name's Jordan Belfi or
That's what it
Jordan
is.
Belfi, and I know he used to be on Entourage,
Oh,
the
okay.
HBO series. I think he's done a lot of TV, but he was really good too. He's sort of the straight man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the same thing, it's like a build almost, you know what I mean? By the
Yep.
time you get towards the middle end of this movie and these two characters are sort of in their at their peak output, it's good. It's really heavy stuff. It's great writing. And hey, fun fact, I was reading they did some clever filmmaking stuff where in the scene where there's a priest gets brought into the room,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And at first, Sean Patrick Flane's character, before he can feel out whether this guy's a threat, they actually molded his hair so like these two pieces go up, and he looks like he has devil horns.
Oh wow.
And then sort of by
I'd
at the
have to
end,
look at that again.
it
That's
is,
pretty cool.
and when you watch it, and at the end of the scene after it's over and the guy's sort of gone, you'll see his hair kind of goes back to the way it was, and because his hair is spiky to begin with, so it's
Yeah.
not this extreme change, but you definitely suddenly see these two pieces, and it's great. It's some great filmmaking.
I
there.
also think of Sean Patrick Flanery going back to like my youth is Young Indiana Jones
Oh,
Chronicles.
yeah, I mean that's how I got introduced
Yep,
to him
yep.
back in the day.
He was of course River Phoenix played young Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as we all know. And then there was the TV series. And
I don't know if a lot of
recently
people saw that. But yeah.
recently I saw something about that TV series that I didn't remember, but that Harrison Ford appeared in
Yeah,
one
I
of the
remember that.
episodes.
I
And he
remember
has
that.
like a burly
Yeah,
beard.
and he's got a patch, like he
And he's
lost
like
an eye
playing
at
a
some point.
saxophone.
Yeah.
Is so bizarre. Anyway, that's a tangent. But
Anyway.
I just want to also say hello to Bay Area Throwbacks.
Hello.
Bay Area Throwbacks. We love you. So yeah, so Nefarious.
Anyway, Nefarious. Yeah,
Certainly one of my favorite
I
films
guess
of the
there's
year.
a little controversy behind that film in terms of the politics behind some of the maybe the
Well,
people
that's
behind
the
it.
thing. I think a lot of
But-
people may have skipped the movie because of this conservative connotation that's attached to the film.
And I can see that at play in the movie. Not when I didn't know about it watching it,
Right.
But now you say it, of course I can see it clearly in there. But
Yep.
it didn't detract from my enjoyment of what these actors were doing, because
No,
it's really
me
all
neither.
about the
Me
act.
neither.
Well, in the writing, the actors and the writing in this movie. That's what it all
I
is.
try to like.
Yeah, the politics shouldn't really matter in this one because it's a great movie.
I try to literally see when it comes to the horror genre every year. I try to see literally as much as I can, and anything I hear about,
I can't keep up with
anything
him
I
at all.
see on iTunes, anything I read about in the horror magazines, or online Reddit posts. I try to see anything I can see. I try to see everything. Of course, you can't see everything, but I try to. Like last night, I watched this really cool movie that's sort of somewhere between sort of like a B movie exploitation homage and a horror film called Candyland, which is about these truck stop prostitutes and the serial killer prostitute. It's really cool. You guys should check that one out. It's on iTunes and on Amazon Prime. It's called Candyland. You should definitely take a look at that one too. But Bay Area Throwbacks just brought up, said, have you guys seen the Thanksgiving movie, the Eli Roth
It's
movie?
funny you mention that. Yeah, go ahead, tell them.
That was definitely on my list. And it's funny, I said to Joe, I didn't see it in the theater. So I was thinking, oh my God, I hope this movie hits streaming before we do this live stream. And of course, it hit streaming last night at midnight. So I
Yeah.
watched Eli Roth's Thanksgiving this morning. And I really love Eli Roth, going way back, to Hostel and Hostel 2 and Cabin Fever. And I've really liked almost everything. Actually, one of the movies he made that a lot of people have slept on that I think is actually really good and really campy and fun is his movie he made with Keanu Reeves called Knock Knock, which is sort of like a riff on Haneke's Funny Games. It's really, really good, and it's really campy and has a really great Keanu Reeves over-the-top performance by Eli Roth. But I have to say, I did not like Thanksgiving, unfortunately. I really wanted to love it, and I just didn't do it for me. I don't know. You didn't see it yet?
No, no, I kind of did put it on my list. I had heard some people that kind of went like, well, that was better than it had any right being. But your opinion is definitely sticking out as
I was
a little
so
different.
excited to see Thanksgiving. It was one of the most anticipated horror films of the year for me. I mean, I remember 16 years ago during Grindhouse when it was one of the fake trailers, like we all know. And I still want Edgar Wright to make Don't into a movie as well. But I just hope if Edgar Wright makes Don't into a movie, it's a little bit better than Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. And I know a lot of people loved Thanksgiving. Let me say this about the Thanksgiving movie. They've greenlit a sequel.
Wow.
Spyglass, Sony, and TriStar. They're going to be making a sequel,
Hmm.
and I actually think that this it's one of these situations where the sequel is going to be way better than the original. I think there's just it goes. I just didn't. It didn't have enough personality for me of its own to stand out. I don't know. It didn't feel like Eli Roth to me. It didn't feel barbaric enough to be Eli Roth. It didn't feel like hardcore enough to be Eli Roth. I think about like Hostel 2,
Well, has
and
he
that's
painted himself into a corner now?
I don't know.
Or does he need to just
It just felt
be
soft.
so
It
extreme?
just felt soft to me. I don't
Mm.
know. That's just me. Now, if you look on the screen right now, you see Christian's top horror picks of 2023. Well, some of these aren't my favorite films of the year. I just wanted to talk about these films as films that had their time and place in 2023. Like, for instance, I'll tell you another one on this list that a lot of people loved from 2023, and I just literally hated, and that's Evil Dead Rise. And I'm a huge, huge Evil Dead fan, going way back. Sam Raimi was like my touchstone director, like going into film school when I was a teenager. My whole life was Sam Raimi. Army of Darkness. I used to literally watch Army of Darkness every single day.
We're
There was
gonna
like,
do Evil Dead for the next episode of Trailer Park.
yeah,
It's gonna be the Evil Dead
exactly.
trailers.
Trailer Park Episode 6, which will be the next Haddonfield Radio video after this. We're going to be doing the vintage and contemporary trailer. We're going to do the 1981 Evil Dead trailer and the 2013 Evil Dead trailer. I love the Fede Alvarez 2013 Evil Dead. It's one of my favorite horror films of the past 10 years. Even of the 21st century, we'll say. I love that. But Evil Dead Rise, I just thought was so lazy. And I don't know. It just didn't work for me. Did you see that one?
Mm-mm.
Have you watched any movies this year?
No,
No?
I was just gonna say, unfortunately,
I had to give a little dig
I
there.
have not seen a lot of what's on your list. I can't keep up with your intake of movies, I admit. And I tend to be a guy like I get stuck on like a certain bunch for a while.
Yeah.
And you know, right
Yep.
now we're doing the whole Nightmare on Elm Street stuff for the main episodes of our series. So I tend to
Well,
watch
exactly.
those ad nauseum right
Yep.
now, like over and over and over. And I've been trying to watch the new Indiana Jones movie for probably a month now.
He's
and
been having a hard time getting to
just
that
can't
one.
get in the time.
I just want to say hello to Everything Scary.
Hello.
Everything Scary, we love you. Nice to see you. Thank you for stopping by and hanging out with us. He apparently loved Thanksgiving. A lot of people loved it.
Well, I mean that's the thing with horror, right? There's a lot of different things to like in the genre, and so you know it's easy for one person to like
Exactly.
one thing and not the other. And
Like I love right at the top of my list. It's at the top of my list doesn't mean it's my favorite film of the year, but it is at the top of the list. And that's a film, Skinamarink. I think it was Kyle Edward Ball was the director. It was interesting. There was two YouTubers this year that ended up breaking out into the mainstream horror genre in terms of making movies, and that was the Philippou brothers who made Talk to Me and Kyle Edward Ball who made Skinamarink. Now, a lot of people hated Skinamarink. Hated it.
what's the general gist of Skinamarink?
Well, Skinamarink is almost an impossible movie to describe because it doesn't really have a plot.
Okay.
Skinamarink is like a perfect example of a subgenre that really broke in 2023, and that's called liminal horror. And a perfect example of that, of liminal horror, actually doesn't exist in movies, and that exists on YouTube, and that is Kane Pixel's World of the Backrooms. And I wonder if a lot of you guys have been following the Backrooms on YouTube. I think it's some of the most exceptional world building, literally, I've ever seen. And the kid's like 18 years old. And I know he's bringing the Backrooms apparently to movie screens, and I think that's very interesting. I'm curious to see what that is going to mean. But this is like a teenager who's making some of the most incredible horror that I think exists on any platform, movie screens, anywhere right now. And that's the Backrooms. So Skinamarink, and there's other ones like a couple other films came out this year: The Outwaters, Dimland. I have another one written down here. Hold on, I should have my notes open here. Let's see, what was some of the other ones here? Hold on, give me 1 second here. Um, we are all going to the World's Fair. Basically, there are movies that have this very kind of David Lynchian, dreamlike feel. Like Skinamarink feels like a 90-minute nightmare an 8-year-old would have.
Wow.
Yet it's almost impossible to describe what the movie is. It's almost just like a vibe.
But
And a lot of liminal horror is just a vibe. And it's like you just sort of get into this mindset and you sort of stick with it. It's not really narrative driven. It's more dreamlike and elusive. But I really love it. Like as a subgenre that's new, I really love it. And I thought Skinamarink was really brilliant. You know, a lot of people hated it, like hated it. But I really thought it was really cool. Let's see, HB3 Electric. Skinamarink was intended to be a collection of common occurring nightmares among people. I think that that's exactly right. That's a beautiful way of describing it. And it has that nightmarish quality, that dreamlike quality that is very hard to kind of depict in a movie and kind of keep people's interest. It certainly kept my interest. I was very unsettled by it. It kind of reminded me of a lot of my childhood fears and this, but I can't even describe why. And I think a lot of liminal horror sort of emerges, in my mind, out of the found footage genre in a way. Like, in a way, I feel like Blair Witch almost qualifies as being its own version of liminal horror in a way. And I think a lot of this stuff sort of emerges out of that genre, but that's just my thought. We have Corey Bird
Corey
saying
Bird,
hello.
hello,
Hello,
hello.
Corey Bird. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us. Joe and I both in our Halloween. Oh no, maybe it was our 45 Years of Terror live stream. We reviewed Brian Duffield's amazing on my list. You'll see No One Will Save You.
oh my God, that was I couldn't stop telling every friend that I knew that was into sort of alien abduction movies to go check this out, but also not really telling them that it's kind of horrific at the same time too. You know, it's a scary alien abduction movie. As if
Yeah.
the idea of just being abducted by an alien wasn't scary enough. These guys take it to a whole different level. And again,
and what's so interesting about that one is it's wordless.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Like
Dialogue free. There's no dialogue in that entire movie.
yeah. And they're still able to accomplish a lot, and you get backstory, you get everything that you would normally get from a fully scripted movie, and it's great effects, great aliens.
It really keeps you captivated. It's a Hulu. It's like a 20th Century Fox film that was released direct to Hulu. So if you want to check it out, that's where I think right now you'll have to go to watch it. But if you haven't seen No One Will Save You, and you're a horror
go do
genre
it.
fan, which I'm sure you are if you're here listening to us babble about horror movies, you should go and watch that movie because it's really well made. It's
Highly
great
recommended.
filmmaking. Another one that I really loved is Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool. Now the funny thing is there's what they call an uncut version of the movie that is literally only about 25 seconds longer than the original. I've purchased both versions of it.
So the extra the version with the extra seconds is sort of an officially
It's like
released version,
the director's
the extended cut, the director's
and it's
cut.
strange
Gotcha.
that it's only like I think 30 seconds or 20
Yeah,
seconds longer,
yeah.
but yet it changes. It's so important. Like the I think the punch of the movie is heightened in the uncut version, strangely enough, and it's down to like just a few shots, really.
So you would recommend the
Yeah,
uncut
absolutely.
version over the
I
cut?
always
Yeah.
recommend director's cuts,
Yeah.
uncut versions, unrated versions.
Uh-huh.
If there's an unrated version, especially in the horror genre, I always go there. Period. But Brandon Cronenberg, of course, the name sounds familiar. He's the son of the body horror king of the world, David Cronenberg. But yet, Brandon Cronenberg really has his own thing. His films are kind of thematically similar to his father's, but he's his own artist. And he made a film, I think, in 2021. That's again one of my favorite films of the decade, of the 21st century, really, and that's Possessor. which is an Andrea Riseborough starring movie that's unbelievable, an incredible film. Brandon Cronenberg is literally one of the most important voices in horror right now, in my opinion. And I think if you haven't seen Possessor or if you haven't seen Infinity Pool, and what's great about Infinity Pool, it has one of my favorite actors in the world right now, Mia Goth, is one of the stars. And if Mia Goth is in a movie, I'm gonna watch it day one.
Yeah,
I
you've brought her up a bunch
adore
of
Mia
times.
Goth. I
Yeah.
think Mia Goth's one of the most exceptionally talented, not just actors, but
What
writers as well.
what else? What else did you just talked about
Ty
her in something
West's
else?
movies, X and Pearl.
Okay.
X, I love. That's another movie I love. Jenna Ortega, of course, Mia Goth. That's a fascinatingly great, like Texas Chainsaw homage, throwback 70s kind of backwoods horror throwback movie. It's awesome.
Midwest Villain Z. Hello, good to see you there. Got your email.
We
And
love
don't
you.
worry, we'll get you a shirt.
We
We'll
love
figure
you.
it out.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see. Of course, I think in the Halloween live cast, I talked about Damien Runya's When Evil Lurks, which up until about a week ago was my absolute favorite film of 2023. And I'm telling you right now, it does, just because something eclipsed it, another movie which I'll talk about in a second eclipsed it, it doesn't detract from the incredible, bleak majesty of When Evil Lurks. Have any of you guys watching right now seen When Evil Lurks? If you haven't, it's available through Shudder right now, and you have to watch it if you haven't seen it. Damien Runya is an Argentinian director, and he is again one of the most important voices in modern and contemporary horror. And that film is so strong and so original and so brilliant that it actually, my jaw was on the floor watching it. There's sequences in that film that I can't even believe I saw. Like, they're so powerful and profound and gory and singular. And when you're like me and you've been watching horror movies for 40 years, it's hard to have something blow the back of your head out. And that movie blew the back of my head out. When Evil Lurks, in many ways, I think is the best horror film of 2023.
Really?
Definitely. I don't think there's anything that even comes close
made
to
that
its
one?
potency. His name is, I believe I'm pronouncing it right. He's an Argentinian director. I believe it's pronounced Damien Runya, Rugna.
Well, that will be next on my list then. If
Yeah,
that's at the top of yours.
It's like you said about No One Will Save You. Anyone that I talk to that loves horror movies, I've been saying you've got to see this movie. This is
You
a
probably have
true
already
horror
told me to
film.
watch it, and I haven't. But
It's brilliant. If you're afraid of subtitles, I mean, you got to get over yourself. Don't be afraid of subtitles. Just watch the. There's a lot of international cinema right now in terms of horror that is so good. There's I believe it's a Danish film called Speak No Evil. Amazing. You gotta, if you don't like films with subtitles, you gotta open your mind a little bit and go watch it. And Midwest Villain Z mentioned Mia Goth is going to be in the Ty West third chapter of the X trilogy, Maxine, which I've heard has got this giallo angle to it, and is also very gory and disturbing. So I'm very, very excited for that. But yeah, When Evil Lurks, I can't recommend it more highly enough. It's literally brilliant. Damien Runya's first film, or maybe not his first film, but his first mainstream film that hit American screens was called Terrified. Now, how weird is it that there's Damien Leone, who made Terrifier, and then there's Damien Runya, who made Terrified. So it's easy to get confused.
Yeah.
These guys are both world-class horror filmmakers, but Terrified and When Evil Lurks is like a 1-2 punch. Maybe only Ari Aster has done, like with Midsommar and Hereditary. It's like that. Just, this is someone who's climbing up into the world of horror and is just definitely a voice to pay attention to and an artist to watch in the horror genre. Another one is just a little movie I wanted to mention. It's like a tiny little independent body horror film that, again, Stephen Graham Jones, I heard him recommend on a podcast. And I looked it up and watched it. It's called Swallowed. And I'm not going to say a word about what this movie is about. You just have to see this movie to believe it.
All right.
I don't want to spoil one molecule of this film. But trust me, if you want to watch an outrageous body horror film from 2023 that I highly recommend, look for the movie Swallowed. Let me give you the name of the director too, just so I can throw a little shout out to him here.
I'm really curious about on your list.
Carter Smith is the name of the filmmaker. This is a great film. I also heard this recommended by another horror connoisseur podcaster, Elric Kane, from the Colors of the Dark podcast. If you guys want a great horror podcast, you should look up, it's on the Fangoria Horror Network. It's called Colors of the Dark with Elric Kane and the amazing Dr. Rebecca McKendry. They host it, and they always are just like chock full of great horror recommendations every single week. So that's a great horror podcast. Anyway, what were you saying?
Please talk about the Boogeyman next, because I find it fascinating that people can still make a movie
Called The Boogeyman?
called the Boogeyman and do something interesting with the idea.
Well, unfortunately, they did not do something
Oh, this was
interesting
not
with the idea,
okay.
no.
Yeah, I guess I should have titled this list differently. I didn't realize they were all good picks. But...
I love the way you title it Top Horror Picks of 2023 because these were the top horror movies of 2023.
Right, okay, yeah. I gotcha.
Just like,
Okay.
it's all subjective. You guys might have loved The Boogeyman.
But the Boogeyman was not...
Well, it's an interesting story because Rob Savage is the director of that. And before this, he's made a couple of almost like these... They're sort of, I guess, again, like this it's not found footage, but he made these films Host and Dashcam. And they're films that take place on somebody's computer screen, on their desktop.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like an evolution of found footage. And this was his first movie where he just made a straightforward narrative film. It's an adaptation of a Stephen King short story. And it's exactly what the title refers to. It's about the Boogeyman. And I just thought the movie I was so excited for this because Rob Savage, I hated his film Dashcam. I loved his film Host. So he was sort of one for two. But I really think he's like a really interesting filmmaker. So I was like really excited to see this and had a lot of pre-release buzz that was really positive. And again, I know a lot of people loved this movie. A lot of audiences, like movie theater audiences, loved it, and a lot of people critically loved it. It got pretty good reviews. It has a really good David I forget how to pronounce his name, Desmalkian. He's like a genre actor. He's always doing interesting things, but he's in it and he's good, and it has that Stephen King vibe. But generally, it has some good creature design. I'll give it that. But generally, it just didn't work for me. I just thought it was a little flat. What any of you guys see The Boogeyman? What did you guys think of it? You should watch it.
No, I know. I like that I got this list from you today because I'll just make my way through it. And yeah, I see Saw X, and I have to admit, I used to be on the Saw train, and then at some point I got off. But I think I need to get back on and get caught back up. I can't remember exactly which one was the last one I watched, but it was definitely a point where I don't know if they built steam up again, but I felt it was a little overdone after a bunch at whatever point it was that I
think when you do 10 films in a series, sometimes what happens is the mythology gets convoluted.
Right.
And I think generally my problem with the Saw franchise is exactly that. The story continuity going through all the films has gotten so astronomically complicated that I never know where I am with these characters.
Yeah.
But I will say, I did think Saw X was really good. And kind of felt like the first 3 Saw films, which I think maybe the first 4. I don't know if you guys know the YouTuber Meat Canyon, and he does a lot of like animated shorts, but he has a secondary channel called Papa Meat where he kind of just talks about horror movies. And he just did a Saw franchise ranking video that I think he put the Saw franchise into an interesting relative perspective. So you might want to check that out on YouTube if you're interested. I'm not going to get into the Saw mythology here. You guys probably know it better than I do. But I did think Saw X was good.
Okay. I mean, I know I always used to, for me anyway, what I was always watching them for were all the different devices and gadgets in different ways.
Right.
People are being killed because it was always, that's at least what I was in for. The story was always good when they were pulling it off. you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, you're right. Sometimes it gets
There's
a
been
little
good
like,
ones.
what?
There's
Huh?
been
Oh, he's not
shit
dead.
ones.
Well.
You're right. And I love the one where they needed to make Jigsaw look like a younger guy, so they just had him wear a baseball hat backwards, and suddenly he's the younger Jigsaw. And then there was the weird Chris Rock one. I think it was
I
called
see. I,
Spiral.
I s- I saw that. I think I saw that. Yeah.
Like, what is that? And
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson
That
is
was
his
weird.
dad.
Yeah, that was really
What's
weird.
going on?
That's right.
It's just such a strange. I think
That might have been where I stepped off the train.
the Saw franchise is so interesting to me, and I love James Wan. Look, James Wan and Lee Wannell, going back to the beginning of the Saw franchise, I love those guys. I love Lee Wannell. Have you guys seen the movie Upgrade that Lee Wannell made, which is a great movie from the last like 10 years? A great sci-fi, sort of horror, but mostly kind of like a futuristic sci-fi action movie, but really, really good and really fun. But the original incarnation of Saw and James Wan's original vision for Saw, I think is just Saw number one is one of the greatest independent horror films ever, in my
Oh
opinion.
yeah.
And you can see its impact on horror, that all the films that are Saw-esque that came out after Saw, like The Collector, and I could go
Well,
on and
it's
on.
a classic twist ending.
One of the greatest twists
Ever. I
ever.
mean, it's gonna always be up there.
I agree with that.
Anyway.
Another one I know I might have mentioned in the Halloween live stream, but I'll talk about it again because I just loved it, was Talk to Me. Talk to Me, if it wasn't for When Evil Lurks, Talk to Me would be my favorite horror film of 2023 by far. I adore this movie. I've seen it 3 times now, and I swear to God, it's gotten better every time. And a lot of it has to do with just this exceptional lead performance. I think her name is Sophie Wilde, this Australian actor. She's excellent, and I love the. Okay, in music, like in songwriting and music, it's all about getting a hook. Like when you're writing, Joe and I have been in bands together, and when you're writing songs, and anyone out there that makes music, when you find a hook, whether it's a guitar lick or a vocal medley or a chorus or something that's a hook, and you've got a good song because of it. Well, some of the best horror movies are movies that have these great hooks. And Talk to Me just has such an exceptional hook, which is that hand, that mystic's hand that you grab onto and you can connect with the spirit world. Well, it's such a brilliant hook. In the narrative, the film, the behind the scenes narrative of Talk to Me about these YouTubers, the Philippou brothers, who were YouTubers and got this movie made and kind of made good and just turned out to be exceptional filmmakers. Well, that's a great story. I mean, I love that. And they were on the Joe Rogan podcast not that long ago, and it's one of the weirdest episodes ever of the Joe Rogan Experience. If you want to hear a very bizarre Joe Rogan episode, look up the one with the Philippou brothers. And I hope I'm pronouncing their name right, but look up that episode. It's bonkers. But of course, everybody's seen Talk to Me. When we were at the 45 Years of Terror convention, the Halloween convention in Pasadena a few months ago, I was blown away by how many people, younger people, I saw walking around with Talk to Me T-shirts, hoodies, hats.
I feel like I do see that title way more than a lot of these other ones, just in what people talking about and in social media and whatnot.
It's really broken through into the mainstream, and it's one of those films that definitely deserves to become a franchise, I think. Or it has the potential to become a really effective franchise. And the movie from 2022 that it most reminded me of, not in terms of the film, but in terms of its effect on pop culture, was the Parker Finn film, which I love, called Smile. Did you see Smile?
No, that's next. You literally
Oh my
texted
God.
me that yesterday.
Smile's one of my favorite horror films
There's
of
so many
many
to watch.
years, and I think that Smile is like way, 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 way brilliant. And I think that's a film that deserves a franchise and could easily be built into a very successful franchise. It also is an idea that could be easily screwed up in the long run and going forward. And I know that they just cast the actress Naomi Scott from the Disney Aladdin movie as the star of the sequel, which I guess means they've got a script and they're well into getting ready to make the movie. And I'm glad for that because I loved that movie. 2022 was really bookended by two big kind of like horror blockbusters, which was Smile and Zach Kreger's Barbarian. And both of those films I thought were awesome. I loved both of those films. 2022 was such a banner year for horror. We've talked about that in some of the episodes of Haddonfield
Yeah,
Radio.
yeah.
In 2023, while it wasn't as exceptional a year, like as you could tell, there's still a lot of great, as you can see in that list over there. There we go. There's a lot of great films that came out this year. What else? What else do we want to talk about here?
Well,
Go ahead.
I mean, I just we're almost through it. I'm curious again about Scream 6.
Yep.
Another franchise I fell off the train at some point. And I'll admit, I now that we're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street so much, I didn't realize the Wes Craven. I think I obviously I knew he directed the first one, but I just was never a huge Scream guy. It never grabbed me that much. And then now that I think I have a new sort of appreciation for Wes Craven as I'm doing all this research for the new series we're doing about Nightmare, I want to go back to Scream and kind of start over and see. But did he direct more than the first one?
The first four.
He did.
He did the first four.
Great.
The only reason that Radio Silence, which is the directors of Scream 5 and 6, stepped in is obviously because Wes passed away.
Well, you can
he would probably
see,
still be making these movies.
You can see the difference with Nightmare where he, because he couldn't maintain the control.
Right.
And he probably was more guarded about that with Scream and making sure that he could kind of keep it in, the Wes Craven playbook,
Here's the thing. With you were talking about Nightmare 3. You wanted to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Well,
the next
yeah.
episode of Haddonfield Radio, of course, is going to be Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, my personal favorite of all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. When I was just doing some research for the new episode, I noticed somewhere along the line it said that when Wes Craven came back to do Nightmare 3, he wanted to do a meta Nightmare film for Nightmare 3, like what ended up being Wes Craven's new Nightmare later in the franchise. I thought that was really interesting, and you see that metatextual quality obviously in the first four, actually all the Scream films. Scream is obviously very metatextual.
Yeah.
And Wes Craven's New Nightmare is an amazing one of the Nightmare films. I can't wait to talk about that on Haddonfield Radio.
Quite crazy.
But imagine that he was already, way back in the 80s,
Yeah.
he was thinking about these meta ideas and bringing this meta quality into the Nightmare franchise. He was so ahead of his time.
His original script for Nightmare 3 was so over the top in terms of the production. Like, he kind of was like, okay, if you're bringing me back, then we're gonna do this like full bore. That they basically read it. The producers were like, whoa, not with the budget we have. We can't.
Right.
This is way ambitious, way ambitious. And ultimately, he didn't stay on board with it. But they used a lot of his original ideas to continue on with Frank Darabont and
it was Chuck Russell directed it, who actually made one of the great 90s movies, the Jim Carrey movie The Mask, which I don't know if you've seen in recent years.
No, it's probably been a while.
Boy, it's really a weird movie, man, The Mask. But yeah,
Well,
Frank
he's
Darabont,
the one who made Freddy weird. I mean,
yeah,
really.
I agree. That's where Freddy kind of gets on a different road.
And he says it. I'll give him credit as a filmmaker jumping into that franchise, and he says like part of his goal was to kind of to push the whole Freddy character out of everyone's sort of comfort zone, and he wanted that funny. He's the guy who made him MTV Freddy, this is right where the switch happened, and I think it was hard during production. I think there was a lot of strife with some producers at the end of the day about sort of, because they were very guarded sort of about Freddy. This was their moneymaker.
But it's funny when you think about it in the context of now, Frank Darabont, of course, you think of The Walking Dead, you think of Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, The Mist. I mean, one of the great genre directors and screenwriters. And I think that Nightmare 3, like the first 3, maybe even the first 4 Nightmare films, have this interesting subtextual kind of weird vibe going on through all of them. Each one of the movies has, and I don't want to talk too much about it. I want to save that for the Haddonfield Radio episodes. But I just...
Well, 3 and 4, I think, were the big money makers of the franchise.
Oh, it's when the franchise really took off in a big way.
Unfortunately, I think the one of the big negatives is they couldn't keep Patricia Arquette for
Right.
the main lead when you get to 5 or 4, and so like it's I don't know, it's a hard sell right there. It's always a hard sell when you have to switch out a main character, you know?
Nightmare 3 has one of my favorite characters of the entire franchise, which is Kincaid.
Oh, he's great.
I love Kincaid.
You know, and it's another weird thing like that they start doing that overlap with the characters into the next one, but only for a little bit. You know,
Right.
they all die off very quickly, and then
Yep.
you know, we get this whole new set of characters to care about. But
I wanted to throw another movie out into the 2023 list
yeah,
just because, again, we talked about this in the Halloween episode. Sorry to interrupt you there.
no,
But,
no, go ahead.
a movie Joe and I both really liked, and a lot of people just snowball beat up on and just got on this negative snowball that was rolling down the hill is The Exorcist Believer.
Yeah,
People are just stupid. There's a lot of people out there that just I think there's a lot of people on social media that talked about hating that movie that never even saw the movie.
It was just their mission, I think, to take it down. You know, is it a perfect movie? No, but is it as bad as what everyone's saying?
No, I thought it was I thought what why am I blanking on the director's name? David Gordon Green. What David Gordon Green does so well with The Exorcist Believer is he takes the Exorcist franchise and makes it a Blumhouse film. He brings that Exorcist idea and
Yeah.
brings it to the contemporary modern age, and he does it as a Blumhouse film. And so it's like a different thing. But Chris Nelson and Vincent Van Dyke and the special effects in
Oh
that
yeah, the
film
effects
are
are great.
incredible.
And you know, something that hit me, I watched it again after we had talked about it during on the show, and you know, I think at the first time around, I felt maybe one of the downsides was that it was a little slow. It was like a build, and
Well,
you
look at the
know,
original Exorcist.
well, yeah, I mean, and then like the second viewing, I realized, and this is not mind blowing film critique here, but it was just you know you needed that for that kind of great, amazing ending to have the gravity it had. You had to
Oh
spend
yeah,
that time with those
100%.
characters in their sort of everyday life and whatnot. All the little stuff that leads up to the big you know exorcism at the end, which you know it's again a slow build, and it's not. Don't think it's just a rehash of the original.
I
you know?
really liked the first hour of Exorcist Believer more than I liked the second hour. I'll say that. I really loved that build up and that slow burn. I really loved the two lead girls, young actors that play the two girls that are possessed. I think are fantastic.
Yeah, they are great.
And I love David Gordon Green, and I love how audacious he is. That he's someone who can take these beloved franchises and puts his own little personal artistic stamp on them. You know, we all know we've talked about it ad nauseum in Haddonfield Radio. His Halloween trilogy is controversial, and there are people who love his Halloween trilogy, people who don't like, people who like some of it, don't like some of it. We don't have to go into that, but I really love. I think he's a great artist and a great director, and I hope he does more horror films going forward. I hope this doesn't scare him away from
Yeah,
horror.
I'm wondering. I know, like he got hit so hard in the beginning. There was like immediately talk of, well, he's not coming back, and we're done with that. And
They were just ready to just and wait. Somebody said it's here. Who was it?
in our comments,
H83 Electric. No. Who said about the fact that Exorcist Believer had a lot of people were bashing it before it even came out,
yeah,
and that's why I think a lot of these people didn't even
I
see
think
the
they
movie.
assumed he would. David Gordon Green was just going to do what he did with Halloween to this, and it wasn't going to be anything original because it was sort of like a mold. He was just going to sort of do the same thing he did, and that's probably why the studio wanted him. And they probably could. They were just assuming that they knew what he was going to probably do with it.
It was
you know?
Midwest Villain Z who said, or she, if it's he
Yeah.
or she, I've never seen so much hate for a movie before it even came out. That is just the truth.
Yeah.
And that's sad. It's sad, like
Yeah.
to disqualify a film before anyone's even seen it. I don't really get why. I don't know if it was residual hate from Halloween Ends. I don't know. But
Yeah, there could be that
I don't
too.
know.
You know.
It's too bad because
Yeah.
in the
I
movie,
didn't think about that.
there's people who report this wrong, they'll say the movie bombed. That's totally not true. The movie was made for a very modest budget, like most Blumhouse releases, and made well over like $130 million in the movie theaters around the world. So
Hmm.
it was actually quite profitable.
I think
So
they
yeah,
they hear that they, that big number that they paid for the whole franchise, what,
right.
400 million or something, and I think they kind of
That's right.
assume that the
Well,
first one is
yeah,
up against
Universal.
that, but they got three
Universal.
movies to do that with.
Universal paid $400 million for The Exorcist IP, but that has nothing to do with The Exorcist Believer. I think that movie was made for
Yeah.
less than 30 million. So
Yeah,
making 100 and
exactly.
something million is profit. One other quick one I wanted to mention, then we'll move on.
Yep.
Because a lot of people didn't see this one either. Is the Ryuhi Kitamura film The Price We Pay, which is a terrible title. But it's got Emil Hirsch and Steven Dorff. It's definitely like a exploitation,
I remember seeing the trailer
almost
for
like
that.
a drive-in movie vibe. It's really weird. It's really surreal. If you guys have ever seen Midnight Meat Train, it's the same director. I love Midnight Meat Train, which is an early Bradley Cooper performance. And it's the same director, and it's just as bonkers and whacked out. If you want to just sit back, get baked, and watch something really bizarre, you could do a lot worse than The Price We Pay. So that's something you might want to check out. You might hate it. You might love it. I don't know. I thought it was really fun. It felt like watching like an old 70s drive-in movie, or like a B movie. But I liked it. It was really, really cool. But anyway,
I think the last one on your list is Cobweb.
Cobweb, another one that I really wanted to like, and I think has a lot of cool elements to it, but ultimately didn't work for me. But I watched it because I'm a big fan of the Amazon TV series The Boys and the original Garth Ennis comic series The Boys. And it has Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander on The Boys, is one of the stars of Cobweb. And so I watched it as soon as it came out on iTunes. I did not see it in the theater. I thought it looked like it had a cool trailer and a cool premise, but I just didn't think it worked for me. But again, a lot of people really loved it. So maybe you guys loved it. But definitely it's one of the more interesting films. It was a big swing movie and has some things that work, some things that don't, but ultimately it just didn't work for me. But definitely worth checking out. Definitely worth seeing.
All right.
So
Well,
let's move on. Let's move on to something else.
Hey, really quick before we talk about serious stuff, we have some Blu-rays to give away.
Oh yeah, let's do
And
that.
so I wanted to give people the information now. We have Halloween 1, 2, and 3 on Blu-ray from Scream Factory over here. All brand new copies. And basically, put hashtag Haddonfield Radio in the comments. You have to be a subscriber. And 24 hours from now, from when we started the show tomorrow night, I'm going to give everyone time.
Yeah, we wanted to give people a chance that are going to tune into this live stream after it's done and not live. We didn't want to exclude people. So,
And
yeah.
we're going to pick 3 winners. So the first winner is going to win the 3 Blu-rays, and then the other 2 are going to get a little Haddonfield Radio swag pack. And I will put up a video tomorrow showing the program picking the 3 random winners based on that hashtag. So feel free to enter that and try to give away some of these movies. And I should say that the versions that we're giving away, the Scream Factory versions, are the ones that we always watch when we were doing our episodes and we we're
Right.
doing a lot of our research. They've got a great commentary tracks. They've got great behind the scenes stuff and all those extras, all those little small documentaries and featurettes and everything else. That's sort of was our starting point anyway. And it's the version that we use when we are doing our commentaries when we're watching it. So
So yeah, if you
just
want
wanted to
to
throw that out there.
qualify for those, just follow what he said. Follow what's right up on the screen right over here. I feel like a weatherman because I'm
So-
seeing this and be backwards. So
Yeah, it's
right
weird.
over here.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say, we always say this in every one of our videos. I figure it's a perfect time to do it. And that is how much we love you and appreciate you. All you guys that have taken time out of your busy schedules to come hang out with us here tonight.
Yeah, we got a lot of the big hitters here
Yeah,
tonight.
oh, yeah, I love seeing
Corey
you guys.
Bird,
All-
hello.
all of you guys. I mean, it's just, we love you. All of you guys. We are so excited just to do these live streams, just to literally have a chance to hang out with you guys. When we record Haddonfield Radio, we're right here in this basement. And we always picture you guys in there watching the movies with us. So it's actually nice to be able to sit here and actually just talk to you guys. And I know you guys. I don't know. It means the world to us that you guys take time and support our creativity and support our videos, and we really really sincerely appreciate that. And I don't want it to come off goofy because it's real. Like honestly, like sincerely from the bottom of both Joe and I's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much since the day we started. Thank you so much for all the support and kindness. You guys have been so cool to us and welcoming in the YouTube community and we just really really appreciate it. And every time we do one of these videos, it's simply because we want to just reach out and talk to you guys. So
Yeah.
that's it.
We
Thank
just like
you.
talking about movies, and we realize this gives us a platform to have conversations with people all over the place. So
Yeah, that just like
you know,
movies, just like we do. That's all this is
exactly.
about. That's all we do Haddonfield Radio for, is just to reach out to other fans of movies just like us and just hang out and talk.
We were
So
just saying, like, we wish we had more time. Like, there's a million movies more we wish we could do and talk about, in classics from other genres as well as horror, of course. But I'm having fun just going through what we've done so
Oh
far.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
about it. It's
Me
been
too.
just slightly over a year, right? We've only been doing this for about 14, 13 months
Yep.
total. And we've got two different series going, plus our live stream videos. And it's been amazing. I didn't think we were going to do it more than a couple, Halloween movies.
We've mentioned before in the Haddonfield Radio episode somewhere along the line, Joe and I actually used to do a talk radio together in Rhode Island for
Mm-hmm.
years. And so doing these live streams is so much fun because it feels just like being back on the radio because it's live and anything can happen and terrible technical difficulties can happen.
Oh my God, I can't. Anyone
That'll be there now forever.
That's on me. I'm the
No, it's
technical
not
guy. We'll
Joe's
get it.
fault.
We'll get it next time. It'll be
We're
something
using new
else that goes
technology.
wrong, but the audio will be okay. I promise. But it's been an incredible year. We've done a lot. I mean, we went out to the Halloween 45 convention. We met like everyone
Oh,
there is to
yes.
meet from the Halloween movies. Got in a
Absolutely.
fight with Trancas. It was a crazy year. And now starting the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. It's great to dive into, I don't know, another piece of my childhood. And I am a sucker for nostalgia.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love anything that can bring me back, especially to the 80s and when I was so absorbed with the movies of my youth. And so going back to a lot of these 80s movies, horror movies, Nightmare and all the Halloween movies, I love it. And what I love is seeing it's like all the peripheral videos associated with it, the marketing and all that stuff. I love it because it was the background of my youth, and I know it's not for everybody who watches the show, and everyone's different ages, but I absolutely love it. And hey, here's to another year of because we'll get through Nightmare probably before the end of this year. There's less movies, and who knows what we'll start next.
Mike Hatfield just brought something up. I'm so glad you reminded me because if I had finished this live stream without bringing up Godzilla minus
Oh
one,
my God, he hasn't
I
stopped talking
wouldn't.
about
I
it.
I would not have been able to sleep tonight.
Yeah,
I would have gone live again just to bring it up as an addendum. Okay, so the day that Joe and I recorded episode 15 of Haddonfield Radio, the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 episode, when we finished recording, I usually take the train because I actually live in Massachusetts, so I go back home to Massachusetts. I stopped at the mall where the movie theater is, waiting for my train, and I saw that Godzilla minus one. Now, I'm a long time Creature double feature, WLVI TV 56. Creature double feature was like my childhood. It was, Godzilla movies, monster movies. And I'd heard so much hype about Godzilla minus one, and I saw that it was going to be playing in the movie theater. So I said, I'm just going to go watch it. And it was one of those awesome experiences because I was the only one in the movie theater. It was a Tuesday afternoon at like 2 o'clock. I was the only one there. It was like a private screening. It was awesome. And my head got blown off. I want to shout out that director. I have it written down.
You're
here.
the second person I know whose movie criticisms I trust that has said that this is like,
Takashi Yamazaki.
yeah, they said this is
Godzilla
the
minus
one.
one.
This is the one to get back into Godzilla with.
It's the greatest
Yeah.
Godzilla movie of all time. And I want to say something. I don't know about you guys, but I really love the legendary MonsterVerse Godzilla films. There's Godzilla 2014, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla vs. Kong. I love those movies. but they are not the traditional Toho Godzilla,
Yeah.
where Godzilla is a force of nature and essentially the bad guy. In the MonsterVerse movies, Godzilla, to an extent, is sort of the good guy because that's the American way of doing things. Even when he's an anti-hero, like in Godzilla vs. Kong, he still ends up sort of a good guy. But in the Godzilla minus one world, he is the bad guy, and he is the horrifying Godzilla. And I have to tell you, this movie, okay, it's amazing to me, and I think the greatest conversation about Godzilla minus one is that it was made for $15 million. A general Hollywood blockbuster of that level is like 100, 200, $300 million.
Are there any notable actors?
I mean, I'm sure in the world of Japanese filmdom, I'm sure, and I'm ignorant to that, unfortunately. But the acting in that movie was excellent. The storyline was engaging. The ideas in the movie were brilliant. The entire sweep of the movie I was caught up in. And on top of that, it's the greatest depiction of Godzilla, in my humble opinion, that's ever been put on film. The some of the special effects, the design of this Godzilla is absolutely breathtaking. If you have a chance to go see Godzilla minus one in the movie theater, you should go and do it, because I saw it on the IMAX and in the giant screen, and it was like actually seeing Godzilla. It was like that's pretty much what it would look like to see Godzilla.
There's an image I saw that as soon as I saw, I was like, well, I got to see this movie, and it's like this fishing boat trying to basically outrun him. It looks like, but he's
Right.
just breaking over the water. You just see his eyes and sort of the top of his head coming at it, and it looks so good.
Well,
Jaws-y, but
what I
good.
noticed is, as I'm watching, I'm like, this movie almost feels like a remake of Jaws.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then I looked it up. I read about the director, and he talked about how Jaws was one of his major touchstones for making
Okay.
Godzilla minus
Okay.
one.
Good, yeah.
That sequence there, actually, the main characters are on this boat crew, and there's like a Quint, a Hooper. I mean, it's strange, but
Gotcha.
you can see the archetypes in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
characters in
yeah,
Godzilla
yeah.
minus one that are
Yeah.
almost one-to-one with Jaws.
Yeah.
And that sequence you're mentioning right there, I mean, there's so many like just all-timer brilliant. And to me, like I said, there was a movie that topped When Evil Lurks in 2023 for me, and I have to say it's Godzilla minus one. It is by far and away my favorite film of 2023. And I'm going to say something. Whenever I talk about movies, I always say my favorite, not the best, because I think, films are subjective. All art is.
Oh yeah.
But in this case, I'm going to say I do think Godzilla minus one, in my opinion, is the best film of 2023. That's just me.
Did they set themselves up to make more?
I mean, you could, there definitely leaves the door open, and there's been like 37 Toho, literally 37
Yeah,
films.
yeah.
And something that's great about it, and that I love about Godzilla 2014, that was made by Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards, who made this film called Monsters a while back, he made Rogue One, the Star
yeah,
Wars
yeah,
film.
yeah.
What he does really exceptionally well is scale. And there's sequences and shots in Rogue One, like where you see Star Destroyers in front of, or the shadow spreading over the Death Star,
Yeah.
that gives you a sense of scope and scale. And in the Godzilla films, that's so integral to kind of buying into the majesty of Godzilla. And this director of Godzilla minus one really captures it. The Godzilla 2014, Gareth Edwards does this impeccable job of giving you a sense of like I keep using the same word, but the majesty of Godzilla. And Godzilla minus one is just a masterclass in how to depict a kaiju, how to depict a giant monster rampaging through a city in a way that makes you as an audience member feel small and feel frightened by the sheer scope and size of these creatures. If you have a chance, go. Don't wait for this to be on iTunes. Go see it in a movie screen, because it's definitely an experience. I loved it. I'm so glad I went. I loved it. Now, you really should go.
Yeah. Yeah. No. There's a million movies that I want to go see. Definitely.
I want you to talk about the Halloween Night Dance comics.
Oh yeah. So I had a chance to. I was gifted these 4 issues of this Halloween comic for all our OG Halloween fans out there. This was a comic series, a four book comic series that came out around 2008, I believe. And this was like, so this is in the middle of the Rob Zombie Halloween phase, and I'm just gonna keep flipping through the covers here, and And
Oh, the
so
covers are so good.
they're good, and there's like 4 different covers, I think, for
For each
issues
issue?
2, 3, and 4 at
Okay,
least.
gotcha.
There's a bunch, and so these came out during the Rob Zombie phase, and but this was sort of like during the dark times, sort of new stuff for people who wanted original Michael sort of
Well, like
merchandise
we were saying
or
before we started recording, it came out right between Halloween 2007 and Halloween 2 from 2009. So it
right.
was literally in the middle of the Rob Zombie era.
And it was like the 30th anniversary of from when the original came out. I really like that's my favorite cover of the 4 I have here. And so it's given the time period it came out in and everything, I really like them. There's some really good art in these, and the storyline. The only thing I will say is that it's always going to be tough when you're trying to do Michael Myers outside of the Haddonfield bubble, and this is close. This sort of takes place. It's supposed to use the events, I think, of Halloween 1 and 2 as the backdrop, and then this is supposed to be many years later. And Michael has basically been hiding out in Russellville, which is like right next door. Remember the town that's mentioned? And
That's where that other
well,
murder took
and
place.
he's literally
Charlie
hiding.
Bowles.
He's literally hiding in Charlie Bowles' house.
Oh
It's
wow, that's cool.
In the story, he was like this farmhouse, and they're saying that once he like killed his family, no one ever moved in there, and it's like this dilapidated house, and that's where he's been staying, and they kind of so the writers have this job now where they have to sort of kind of get you invested into these a new group of teenagers, right? And it's sort of like they do this kind of cool roundabout way to show you some connections, and they kind of try to give you how one of the main female leads would have some backstory with Michael,
Right.
right? So a past trauma that she is, afraid of. And it's they give Michael some brutal kills. They There's some interesting ideas played with the idea of Michael having living off on his own in this farmhouse, and there's this point where there's like a drawer that one of the victims sort of pulls open, and he's got like a whole drawer full of the white masks.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a unique.
It's as if
like-
that he has a multiple, I don't know. He just gets them whenever he can. Or I don't know if they're trying to play on the idea of why he might have different looks, because it's hard to, it's kind of like a drawer and they're all folded up and it's drawn. But it's really interesting. I mean, I don't want to give the whole thing away, but if you ever get your chance to read them and check them out, I know they're old, but they are a great little Halloween, I don't know, side journey to take if you want to read something that's
And the Halloween comics have such a rich history within the Halloween franchise. Again, as all of our Halloween OG listeners and viewers know, comic books have played such an interesting part in the history of the Halloween franchise. And a lot of people think that Night Dance by Stephen Hutchinson and Tim Seeley is one of the best, if not the best, version of the comics lore of Halloween franchise.
Yeah, I mean, even my buddy who gave it to me, he's a comic guy, and he said when he was gifted these, it was because or when he got them, it was because the comic shop owner that he knew was literally like, you gotta take these and read these. I know you like, horror, and you're a comic guy, and these are great. And he's not a Halloween guy, so then thankfully he gets them
Tim
to me.
Seeley did another comic book series that just popped into my head that I remember I used to love. And I'm pretty sure it was Tim Seeley. It's called Hack Slash. That was sort of like a slasher movie comic book series, like a comic book series set in a universe of slashers, if I remember. Now this is going back to like my 20s. So, but I'm pretty sure it was Tim Seeley. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, like I was saying a minute ago, the artwork is great. Tim's illustrations, I kept getting lost in the art. I'd kind of like trail off from reading the words because I was like, wow, look at this and that, and I thought it was interesting to see how like a comic book artist was trying to recreate sort of film moments, like the idea of how Michael, the creepy way he comes out of the shadows right behind the
Right,
victim,
right. That's so
and they
cool.
have to sort of draw that through multiple frames to give you that impression. And it was it was great for the art alone, but the story is it's worth a read. Again, it took me middle of the second issue before I was kind of like, oh, kind of like
Hmm.
a lot of things start clicking in the story, and you're like, okay, this isn't just trivial nonsense.
There's another series of comics that I've always been curious about. I think it's either called The First Death of Laurie Strode or The Last Death of Laurie Strode.
Yeah.
Let me look that up. I'm pretty sure it's The First Death of Laurie Strode, and it's, again, it might even be by the same writers. Let's see.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's no, besides like on the inside cover, they tell you a little bit about, it's like a quick synopsis basically of the first two films. And then they leave you with that, but there's no, like the local police in Russellville are well aware of who Michael Myers is and his
The
history.
First Death of Laurie Strode. Sorry.
And that's interesting too. In this one, the sheriff is like a young new sheriff who's very inexperienced, and he's kind of like, oh shit, what do we do if this is Michael Myers? Because he knows about him, but he's very inexperienced. So very opposite of what we've seen in the movies. And I think it's also very I don't know, interesting that you're dealing with a Halloween storyline with no Dr. Loomis.
Right. Oh, that's
Uh,
interesting. Yeah, right.
there's no one. There's no one hunting him in this movie. I mean, in this comic, sort of. It's just sort of he's doing the hunting.
I kind of love that.
Yeah,
I really actually think
yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just every time I come over here to record Haddonfield Radio lately, I always pick up those comics
yeah. They're great.
and start flipping through them because it's so cool. Actually, at the 45 Years of Terror, I think Stephen Hutchinson was there and had a booth,
Yeah,
and he was selling the comics, and they were really expensive, so they're obviously valuable and very cool. And I just think it's great. Joe wanted to bring that onto the live stream and talk a little bit about that, and I'm glad that we did.
and
What do you got there?
that's a great. Some
Yeah,
of
I
that
mean,
artwork
look at
looking-
that.
Some good stuff there.
And like you were saying, it's great during the Rob Zombie era where there were some people who were dissatisfied with that direction of Michael Myers, that they could still get some feeling of the traditional Michael Myers, even if
Yeah,
it was in comic form.
yeah. I joked this. We call it the dark times. As a Star Wars fan, there was a period where there wasn't much going on, and we called it the dark times. It was like you didn't have anything, but there were the books and
All the
comics.
extended universe.
Well, they
of
kind of kept it
the
alive, right?
legends, yeah.
So this was, that's why I equate this to that. It's sort of in that time period. Yes, Rob Zombie was making his movies, but obviously they were a total departure from the originals. So this was sort of, this is the books and the comics that are trying to sort of continue that original Michael feel. And, I mean, they had no idea that we would ever get back to original Michael Myers, At this point, they're filming Rob Zombie stuff, and as far as they know that we finished films,
Right.
with the original. So this is their way of continuing it. It's great. I like it. Good. Highly recommend them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got to get myself some copies of those. I got to just, bear down and spend the money and get them.
Yeah, I don't know if they're cheap or not, but they got to be out there somewhere.
Well,
Everything's on
H83
the
Electric
internet.
said the publisher went out of business before the series was finished.
Okay, so I was wondering, it's only a 4-issue series, but or this set, but
HB3. I keep saying H83. I'm so sorry about that. My eyes are shot. I'm 48.
but it definitely leaves itself to they could have done more with some of the characters who are left at the end here, and Michael obviously. But
Do you mind if I take a minute just to talk about
No.
some of the upcoming 2024 horror releases
no,
I
please do.
noticed?
Yeah, you keep your finger on the pulse of all the horror movies.
There's
so.
a lot of 2024 is sort of shaping up to be a very interesting year for horror. I was just kind of Googling last night in preparation for this live stream, just looking up some of the films that are in production. I'll just run through a few of them. I don't know what you guys think of the A Quiet Place movies, the two A Quiet Place
I liked
movies. I love them both.
Yeah. Oh, they're doing another?
They're doing a third one. However, it's not with John Krasinski directing. It's with a director named Michael Sarnowski. Who
But
made
did he
this
write it?
John Krasinski, I believe he wrote it. It's going to be called A Quiet Place Day One, which takes place at the very beginning of the invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Sarnowski is actually a really interesting director. He made the Nicolas Cage film came out last year called Pig. I don't know if any of you guys saw that. It's not a horror film. It's just a really kind of gritty character piece. It's really good. I have a problem with any films that depict animal cruelty or animal violence. I have a problem, like I have a hard time with that. So I had a bit of a problem with the movie Pig, but I think the filmmaking is excellent. So I'm very curious to see what Michael Sarnowski will do with the Quiet Place franchise. I mentioned Fede Alvarez a few minutes ago because I was talking about what did Fede Alvarez direct? Oh, Evil Dead 2013 we were talking about. Well, he's doing the new Alien film, which apparently is called Alien Romulus, coming out in 2024.
There's another Alien movie.
This one takes place between Alien 1 and Aliens. It takes place
Huh.
in between those two films.
But
And-
not with Ripley and all that.
No, because Ripley would be in cryo sleep for like
I gotcha.
54 years.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, the actress I hate saying the word actress. I'm trying to get that out of my lexicon. I'm trying to just say actor. I hate saying that word actress. So I'm just going to say that the actor, her name is Kaylee Spaney. She really just popped this year in the Sofia Coppola movie called Priscilla, which is about Priscilla Presley and Elvis in their early part of their relationship, which is an amazing film. Her performance, like Sean Patrick Flannery in Nefarious, Kaylee Spaney's performance in Priscilla, easily one of my favorite performances of 2023. It's obviously not a horror film, but you should definitely check it out if you just love movies. Sofia Coppola is just one of my favorite directors. But she stars in this new Alien film, and I love Fede Alvarez. He made Don't Breathe. He made the Girl in the Spider's Web, the Lisbeth Salander film. He made Evil Dead 2013, which, again, one of my favorite horror films of the past 20 years. And I think he's just a great horror director. And so I'm very curious to see. And apparently Ridley Scott loved what he did with this film when he saw the test screening. So that's interesting. So we'll see. Alien films post.
That's the problem.
Hit or
It's
miss.
it's not a critique on say this new one or anything. It's just there's been a lot. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's hard to
if
tell
we need
if
a
it's going to
break
be
or
good,
not.
but
Or, I
I'm
don't know.
curious. If it's a straightforward old school Alien film, I'm sort of there for it. I mean, I'll be there for it because I love that franchise.
Yeah. I mean,
But,
I guess
you know.
reviews will be telling, at least in the beginning.
We'll see. They just announced they're making Saw 11. Huge surprise. Saw 11. I'm sure next Christmas live stream we'll be talking about Saw 12. There'll
my
probably
God.
be 200 Saws by the time we're done. And Jigsaw will be 371 years old, and he will literally be in the little wheelchair like the puppet.
Put Jigsaw in space eventually.
Yeah, why not? They all go to space. We mentioned Smile 2. Smile 2 is coming out in 2024. One of the movie I'm the most excited for in 2024. Obviously, Damien Leone's Terrifier 3. I know a lot of people have seen the Terrifier 3 teaser. The funny thing is, our Instagram page, of course, is primarily for Halloween franchise and now Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But by far and away, the most popular post I've ever put up on that Instagram page was talking about the Terrifier 3 teaser. It had over like 11,000 likes and like 200 comments. It sort of blew my mind. I think that Terrifier 3 teaser is pretty brilliant. And I talked
Well,
about
that
in that
character
post.
really resonates.
Art the
know?
Clown, I think, is the signature horror character of the contemporary era of horror. I think since Ghostface, I think Art the Clown is the most important slasher character, obviously. And I think Damien Leone is super important to the horror genre going forward.
Yeah, but like Terrifier or Art the Clown is scary in a different way than like Ghostface. You know what I mean? Like just the look of
way
him.
differently. I just mean in terms of like pop cultural
Yeah,
impact.
okay.
I mean in terms of a character breaking into the pop cultural landscape.
Mhm.
Art the Clown, I think, is like really the new Michael Myers. I think 20 years from now there will be Terrifier conventions like there are Halloween conventions now. I really do believe that. And a lot of people just think Damien Leone, they don't like his films or it's too barbaric or too hardcore, not enough plot, not enough character. But I think that's all nonsense. I think Terrifier 2 was one of the most brilliant horror films ever made. Period. Not just from the contemporary period, but just ever. Terrifier 2 is an all-timer, in my opinion, and I cannot wait to see. And I talked about, Damien Leone mentioned that there is a sequence in the beginning of Terrifier 3 that's so gnarly that he actually couldn't get big studio money because they said, we'll produce, some of the bigger studios said, we'll produce Terrifier 3 if you remove that controversial scene. And he said no, so he went back to his roots and just is making it his own way with that scene. And I believe, my theory is, if you look at the Terrifier 3 teaser, I believe that's culled from that controversial opening scene. And what I mean by that is I think we're going to see that little girl at the beginning of the teaser for Terrifier 3. We're going to see her horrifically butchered. Now, I think that's very taboo. Killing children in a movie is taboo.
Especially by quote-unquote Santa.
Especially when you tie Santa imagery in.
Yeah.
We all remember, if you're a horror fan, you know the backlash that came from Silent Night, that Deadly Night. That was a hugely picketed film when that was released, and it's because it utilized Santa imagery in a horror film.
For me, I don't know if you remember in the 80s, you know what also sticks out in my head was the Tales from the Crypt episode.
The very first episode ever
right?
of Tales from the Crypt,
was that
I believe.
You're right, with
Larry
Drake.
Drake.
Yeah.
I think it's called In All Through the House. I think it was the name of that Tales from the Crypt episode.
Yeah.
And
Classic.
Larry Drake is an escaped mental patient, and he's wearing the Santa Claus
The dirty
outfit.
Santa outfit. Oh, man, I remember it.
It's one of the iconic Tales from the Crypt episodes. It may not have been the first. I want to say it was the first episode, but it's within the first 3 episodes for sure.
You know,
Robert Zemeckis directed that. Believe it or not.
Directed which one?
That episode.
Oh.
Robert Zemeckis directed that episode.
You know what? Doing our research about Nightmare, I found out that when a lot of when they were doing the Freddy TV show, when they got canceled.
Oh, Freddy's Nightmares.
Freddy's Nightmares.
Right, yep.
That most of that production team went over the Tales from the Crypt. And when you look at
you can totally see that.
Yeah, you look at some of those like the Robert Englund cut-ins the wraparounds they did at the beginning and the end
with Freddy.
And then you look at the Crypt Keeper things.
Oh my
it's
God,
like,
look at that.
There's even some where it's like they're both laughing the same at the end, and it's all
it's
lined
funny
up
that
the
it's
same.
both Kevin Yeager.
Right.
Kevin Yeager, who did the Crypt Keeper, and Kevin Yeager, who designed that era of Freddy.
They kind of learned their lesson on the Freddy show and kind of knew when to pull back a little.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I never would have tied those two together.
Right?
Yeah. And speaking of Tales from the Crypt, can we all agree that it's about time that Tales from the Crypt is released somewhere to streaming? Like, you can find episodes on YouTube, but why isn't Tales from the Crypt on HBO Max?
Classic, right?
Or like we mentioned in one of the previous episodes of Haddonfield Radio, why isn't some of that classic HBO programming like Dream On? Why isn't that available on streaming? It's kind of bizarre.
Does anybody care besides us?
Maybe not, but I would love to see that show again. Might have been the first. No, the first place I saw boobs was Jamie Lee Curtis in Trading Places. But
which is another dirty
Dream
Santa
On.
Claus outfit. Sorry.
Dream On was some of my.
Yeah.
Well, my mom might be listening to this live stream, so we'll leave it at that. But Dream On HBO, if you guys, my age group, and you would remember it. There was a lot of.
Yeah.
I
stayed up very late.
Yeah.
Snuck downstairs. You know the rest of the story.
Another one I'm looking forward to is Robert Eggers' version of Nosferatu comes out in 2024.
Yes. There's been a lot of vampire stuff. I feel like.
But that's
but there always is, right?
That's the classic version.
Yeah.
And it's almost like every generation's had it. The 30s had the Max Schreck. Then Werner Herzog did a version of it in the 70s or the 80s with Klaus Kinski.
Yep.
And now Robert Eggers, of course, who made The Lighthouse and made I always call it The Vivitch, but The Witch and The Northman. He's doing this version of Nosferatu.
I mean, Coppola's in the 90s there.
Well, that was just Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh.
That Coppola made.
Sorry,
but there's
a
lot
Nosferatu,
of Nosferatu
You're right.
imagery.
What was that movie with Willem Dafoe where it was like about the making of it or something?
Shadow of the Vampire.
Yeah, that was really good.
That was
too.
about the making of Nosferatu. Right.
But implying that he was really doing those things, whether I don't know if they want to say he was a vampire or not, but it was a really
Max
good
Schreck
take on
was
it.
like one of the earliest versions of like basically what we would call method acting now.
Right.
And he was supposedly so in character that he was doing creepy things.
And you talked about Klaus Kinski. I mean, that was also Robert Englund's one of his major influences for Freddy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Klaus Kinski, one of the greatest film actors of all time.
Creepy.
Just a true maverick, wild man actor. You don't see them like that anymore. I know Nicolas Cage calls himself the West Coast Klaus Kinski, but I love Nicolas Cage, but he's not Klaus Kinski.
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
And I don't mean to down Nicolas Cage.
No,
I love
no, no,
Nicolas
no,
Cage,
no, no.
but
I do too. Yeah.
he's not Klaus Kinski. We talked about Maxine, the trilogy capper of Ty West, X, and Pearl, the third one with Mia Goth. You know what I read is coming out in 2024 is a narrative movie based on the old Faces of Death videos.
What do you
Remember
mean by that?
Faces of Death?
Yeah.
Okay, so they made a movie that's like a narrative film that is sort of about the world of the Faces of Death, seeing death happen in real life, seeing videos of like snuff films.
Gotcha.
So it's like a traditional, like a Blumhouse style horror film
But
called Faces of Death
yeah.
that has something to do with those snuff films being made.
Gotcha.
Now, I remember being like 13,
Oh
14,
my
15,
God.
16 and renting Faces of
I
Death from the
should
video
not
store.
have been watching some of that stuff at all, even now.
No. Now, of course,
No.
some of it wasn't actual death.
No, but some of it was.
Some of it was.
Some of it definitely was.
And what do you guys? Do you guys remember the old Faces of Death VHS tapes? Oh my God, was that gnarly? And then what was that website there? Rotten.com. I remember then in my 20s or in my early 30s, it was Rotten.com was like the Faces of Death of the internet. And now it's just everywhere. It just doesn't have a. I don't know if like kids nowadays would even like get off on Faces of Death, or if that would even have any like sort of effect on kids who are so like
Well,
desensitized
half of it's on YouTube now. It's
exactly.
You could anything that was in that was real is just a clip on YouTube now.
Midwest Villain Z just brought up the movie, Nicolas Cage movie 8mm, which is totally similar to like Faces of Death, like a narrative film set in that type of snuff film world. Very, very good parallel. You just brought
that's
up
a good
there.
point. Yeah, that was a good movie. I kind of like that.
A movie that's been long in the can, and I guess now is supposedly going to Paramount Plus streaming, which doesn't bode well, is the Gary Dauberman remake of Salem's Lot, which I guess was made and finished a while ago, and
So what's been the holdup?
I don't know. That usually is not a
Usually means
doesn't
it
mean
sucks,
good things.
quite frankly.
There was that Pet Cemetery sequel called Pet Cemetery Bloodlines that just went straight
David
to
Duchovny,
streaming
right?
with David Duchovny. That is about the story of, remember Judd Crandall in
Yeah,
Pet Cemetery talks about the neighbor and the kid comes back from war, Timmy,
yeah.
and it's like that story, but
Yeah.
it didn't make much of a dent. Zach Kreger, I mentioned earlier, he made Barbarian. Well, he has a film coming out in 2024 that's apparently like a script that created a bidding war amongst the studios. It's apparently called Weapons, and it's and Zach Kreger calls it a quote horror epic. And I'm very curious what that is. There's no like log line released about it.
Horror epic.
Apparently, he said it's like going to be like a literal like 3-hour horror epic.
You know, I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, but I'm getting a little.
Everything being three and a
like
half hours
you
long.
gotta be like
That's the effect
freaking-
that streaming's had on
I
cinema.
guess, but I mean,
And binge watching.
you
that's the
have to
effect.
be a hell of a filmmaker to pull off effectively a close to 3 hour movie, where your audience doesn't feel the effects of it being a 3 hour movie.
Well, I just watched the new Martin Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, which I didn't like. And I find it almost like, I feel like offensive towards myself for saying I didn't like a Martin Scorsese movie. Like, and is it a bad movie? No. It's not a bad movie. It's a quality, brilliantly made, I mean, he's a master. It's a brilliantly directed film, but it's 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just...
And I know that, sure, you want to say, hey, he's earned that right? He wants to make them. But that doesn't mean it can hold up to that.
Why are all
I
Martin
don't know.
Scorsese films now 3.5 hours and $200 million budgeted films? Like, why? Why can't he make a 90-minute film? I don't get it. Like, I agree. But I really do believe that this is the effect that binge watching and streaming has had on cinema. Like cinema, movie theater films feel like they have to compete somehow with that storytelling length that you get when you release something direct to streaming. Like a lot of what you see on Netflix that, like, look at Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass that was on Netflix. It's like 6 or 8 episodes, but it still feels like a movie. It just feels like a movie that's been stretched into 8 parts.
Yeah, but there's a sort of ebb and flow there, right?
There's an episodic ebb and
so
flow. Yes.
it's different, it's tough. When you do a movie this long or really long, and man, it's you gotta really, really grab people and suck them in.
Oh,
but you
100%.
also have to have the credentials, like, and even that, man, like I said, I've been trying to watch the new Indiana Jones movie, and arguably some really good filmmakers, actors, classic character, and all this stuff. But it's the fact that it's 2 hours and 40 minutes that I keep stopping myself from sitting and watching it.
And I felt like
that's an Indiana Jones movie. And it's a movie that I feel like has a strong chance for me anyway, of being entertained. It's right in my wheelhouse of everything. And like, and it's still like, God, it's the time, it's the length. I don't feel like that movie will hold up.
I felt the length.
Yeah, I already know it's not. None of his no other Indiana Jones movie is that long. You already know he doesn't.
Go back to Raiders, and Raiders. It's supposed to just be a serial. In nine, like, okay. Jose Padilla, I just want to say hello to you. We love you. Hello, thanks for joining us. Midwest Villain C said an hour 30 is like the sweet spot, especially for horror.
Yep,
Totally
or
agree.
even 2 hours,
2 hours,
or close
hour
to
45.
2 for a solid movie. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of the greats are around 2 hours, but you have to. If you're a no-name guy, there's no chance. You know what I mean? Hopefully your movie's really good and you get the reviews you need to get people to sit through a long movie. And then you have a guy like Scorsese, and it's still.
It didn't. Killers of the Flower Moon.
It's like, how many of those does a filmmaker have in him? Not every. You can't expect that guy, to always make a great 3+ hour movie every time.
I'll be honest. I missed the Scorsese that made the movie After Hours with Griffin Dunn. That was like an hour and 35 minutes. That's a great movie.
No, it is. It is
one of my favorite movies of that era of Scorsese.
Yeah.
And that was a short, film in and out.
No, that's what I mean. Like, and he has made some good long ones, but so the chances are of him making a lot of good long ones. When most times a long movie,
well, like look at like Wolf of Wall Street's 3 hours. This is 3 hours. I mean, what was that one?
Goodfellas, I bet, is
The
even
Irishman,
like 2+
3 hours.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're going to release, like, Killers of the Flower Moon was like Napoleon, the Ridley Scott movie, was made for Apple TV. So ultimately, that's where it's going to live. Like, people can go in the theater and see it or buy it on iTunes, but ultimately it'll live on Apple TV. Okay, The Irishman was made for Netflix. When you watch content on Netflix, it's not uncommon to watch like an episode a night or a couple episodes of something a night. If you watched The Irishman, you might have watched the first 90 minutes the first night, the second 90 minutes the second night. So maybe they're building these films for that style of watching and taking in content.
Well, think about streaming versus going to the movie theaters. Two different trains of thought.
Oh, God, yeah.
Streaming, they're trying to squeeze as much as they can get out of the product that they paid for because, people have a subscription. They can watch that movie over and over, and they're not paying like if they go to the theater every time they want to see it over and over again, right? So they want as many minutes as possible. They want there to be reasons for these people. It's just I don't know. We're in that we are definitely in a. I don't know if it's still a transitionary phase, but it's a definitely. It's interesting to see the effect, especially since COVID, of streaming on people's viewing.
100% I agree. And like going back to what Midwest Villain Z said about the 90 minutes, I've said this before, but horror movies and comedies are like kissing cousins in terms of genre, in terms of filmmaking. And a comedy in a horror movie, 90 minutes is perfect. You punctuate that 90 minutes, comedies with laughs, horror with scares, but you don't want to what's the word? Outlive your welcome. What is outstay your welcome, right? You want to sort of like leave them wanting more. And that's why, yeah, I'm curious
Now,
with that movie Weapons by Zach Cregger's. If it is going to be that length and it is epic, well, will it work as a horror movie with that length?
you could go on the flip side now, like someone was mentioning about the Friday the 13th Camp Crystal Lake series that's coming out.
On
So
Peacock.
now we have the flip side. What happens when you take a movie idea and you try to boil it down to an episodic,
Or like the Halloween
you know,
franchise
yeah.
is going to happen.
Well, I
That's
think
going to happen with that too.
exactly. And I was going to say, like, I think
That
it's going to
that big
be.
TV deal of 2023 that they signed with Miramax.
They're probably closely watching what happens with the Friday the 13th TV series to see how that.
And the Camp Crystal Lake series is actually being the showrunner and producer is Brian Fuller, who's really
he's done a lot of
really
stuff.
brilliant writer, and I always think of he did the Hannibal series, and so in terms of adapting material to the television screen, I mean he's definitely got a great track record. Do I think there's enough mythology in the Friday the 13th world to build a multi-season television series? Well, I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't see it, but I would love to be wrong, and maybe
Depends-
Camp Crystal Lake would
Like
be
you
very
said,
interesting.
it depends on their hook, right?
It's all about the hook. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
They can't rely on the hook that they had before with Jason, so or at least not in the way they did. So, what are they going to do with it? You know,
Midwest Villain Z just brought up a lot of great points you're bringing up. The downside with streaming is the eventual death of physical media.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is true. I definitely. It was weird because I had a conversation with our buddy Chris. There was a movie we both wanted, and a weird documentary, and you could stream it. You could buy it to stream, or you could buy the disc. And I bought the disc, and he was streaming it, and he was kind of like, why did you?
Right.
And I said, well, when it's something I know I really like, and this was a documentary about Star Wars, and Star Wars is my other obsession in life, and so I was like, if it's stuff I really really know I love, and I don't want to lose access to, I want the disc. I still want my physical media.
Well, you have to
I
remember
don't want to rely on all these online libraries or
with digital
passcodes
streaming,
and this and that.
like you go to iTunes like I do. My iTunes library of purchased movies is like hundreds of movies at this point. But obviously you're not buying the movie. What you're buying is almost like a royalty, a private exhibition royalty right to the film.
And that's what I mean.
They can rip that away from you at any time.
And that's happened. I mean, it's not a lot, but there's been a handful of movies over the years where, whether it was the streaming platform or whatever thing I was a part of, just stopped existing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that was it. There goes those, access to those movies. So I'm definitely in the middle. I buy a lot of them digitally. A lot, even Nefarious. You just told me to get. I did that because at the end of the day,
it's convenience.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch it
something.
more than
Right.
a couple of times, probably. Admittedly,
Like a lot of movies, I'm sitting in my room at like 1:40 in the morning, and I'll read something online on a Reddit post. Oh, this movie sounds awesome! I immediately go to iTunes and just get it.
Yep.
Either I rent it or I buy it, depending on the price. But that's the thing. Like iTunes as a movie distribution platform, it's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
You can.
Sometimes I do both.
You can find.
Sometimes I
anytime.
do both just because I'm impatient.
Yeah.
Where I know I want the disc and I order it, but I also want to watch the movie tonight, so I'll get the digital version just because I want to see it. But I know I want to sit through the extras on the disc and
you got.
I don't
that's
know,
so
or the
important.
disc comes with the director's version too, or the whatever, and.
I one of my biggest passions in the world, more than almost anything, honestly, if you want to know a little fun fact about me, is books. I'm a huge book collector. Like
a lot.
I literally have like a secondhand bookstore in my house. Like literally.
I don't know how it's possible for you to watch as many movies as you do and read as many books as you do.
I
honestly.
read on a daily basis. I collect books. My happy place in this world, beyond being here in front of a microphone doing these videos, is at a bookstore. And one of my biggest fears along these same lines is that ultimately the bookstores are going to go away. And
Well,
I think that's
they kind of are.
I
I
know.
mean, you
Like
know,
I used to go to a lot of secondhand bookstores,
yeah,
and that was like my joy. And
yeah,
after COVID, especially,
yeah,
they've been just obliterated
yeah.
out of existence. But I still go to Barnes and Nobles like at least once a week. I
When we
always
went out to
buy
California,
books.
that's where like, what should we do today? And all you want to do is like, let's go to the bookstores. Let's find bookstores.
I love
You
books. I
know?
always
Yeah,
have. I love them.
yeah.
But the same thing with physical media. I still go to Newberry Comics at least once a
But
month
no,
and buy
the
DVDs and
the other
Blu-rays.
problem with physical media is that the manufacturers of all the equipment that plays physical media, I mean, it is getting harder and harder to have all the machines that play all these things too. They are actively, are putting out all your iMacs and laptops and everything. It doesn't even have a disk drive in it half the time. I went and got bought a CD recently, and all of a sudden I came home to play it, and I was like, huh, hey, I got nothing. I was like,
you couldn't put
all of a sudden I was like, there's nothing to, I had nothing to put it in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had
It
like, I
might
had,
as well be an 8
I
track.
had to go get like my old external CD drive and
Yeah.
plug it into the USB. But even that stuff, slowly they're getting rid of, everything's air and Wi-Fi, and that's great technology, and I love using it all. But it is becoming harder to easily access, older physical media, or it's one of the kind of. I always think, you're the dog chasing your own tail sometimes when you always want to have the best version of something you really like, because every few years there's just a new, we had DVDs and Blu-rays and now 4K, and then there's going to be 8K, and then there's going to be 12K. It's just going to, and so it's like, where does it stop? But, I'm that guy that will just, for the movies I really love, I will just keep buying all the different versions.
Oh yeah, you have
And
to.
I feel like right now in society there's a resurgence of the love of the older, especially 80s.
Well, right now, a big thing right now, the director Christopher Nolan has been on like a harangue recently in the media about the idea of physical media
Yeah.
and the preservation of physical media, and the idea that these companies like iTunes or Disney or Apple, all of them, they can rip those movies right back out of your library. As a matter of fact, I've had this happen where I've bought movies and then I go, oh, I think I own this movie. I go, where the hell is that? I know I had bought that title, and it's just been ripped out of that library. So Christopher Nolan, especially with the movie Oppenheimer, he's really encouraged people to go out and buy a physical copy of the disc. And I, like you were just saying, just like you have books on bookshelves, okay? I think you have movies on movie shelves.
Yeah.
My bookshelf also has got DVDs and Blu-rays
Yeah.
stacked up on it.
I swear VHS is hotter than it's been in a long time for some reason right now.
Well, it's just that nostalgic,
Everybody wants it.
tactile appeal of a VHS.
Everyone wants all the different versions, the full screen and the wide screen, and back, they used to label everything letterboxed, or, the different countries to put it out. But, all these different media that use tape, it is harder and harder to keep those sort of systems working, and all those old players rely on rubber belts and stuff, and that all degrades. So it is tough to find new ones or to keep your old ones working, which, hey.
There's a movie I watched the other night. I know this is a total tangent here.
Yeah.
Total, I just jumped ship here.
Please, I was about to start talking about fixing VCRs, I think, so let's switch
Really quick though,
gears.
remember when in the old days when we used to make short films as kids, you'd had to hook the two VCRs together, and you had one chance for each edit, or you had to start the whole freaking thing over again?
Yeah.
I often wonder myself, how did I even know to do that? Like he's always been like Mr. Technical, he's got wires coming out of every orifice, and he's connecting plugs to plugs to plugs even in his sleep. But I don't know how I knew how to do that. But me and my old friend, both of our old friend, the late Larry DeGiusto, we used to always make these weird short films by editing from VCR to VCR.
Well, it was a rite of childhood as in the 80s. I mean, we all did it. Everyone was connecting their VCRs and making something.
But I don't know how I knew to do that. There's no
I
internet.
think, I think we all did. I think it just made its way through children,
I
and
guess.
every, it was the new technology everyone was playing with,
well, and I guess we just had to be. We just were so desperate to make films that you just figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say, I watched one of my favorite movies, horror wise, but I just hadn't seen it in a couple of years, and I watched it. It just popped up in a feed, so I decided to watch it. the Mike Flanagan film Oculus. Have you guys seen this movie with Karen Gillan? Oh my God. It just, first off, Mike Flanagan is just another one of the masters of contemporary horror, one of the most important voices in horror. He just did the Fall of the House of Usher for Netflix. His most recent Netflix series is probably the. Okay, I still think Midnight Mass is his best Netflix series, but the House of Usher is awesome. Awesome. If you guys haven't had a chance to see it, it just is on Netflix as of recently. I watched it all. I loved it. But Oculus, if you haven't seen this movie, Oculus by Mike Flanagan, oh my God, what an awesome movie. What an original, awesome movie. I just wanted to throw it out there.
You know what I got sucked up watching? It was, sort of in the vein of sci-fi horror. And I'm thinking, I'm going to blank on the name, but you're going to remember. It was a Keanu Reeves movie about cloning his family, his dead family. It was it's called a copy or
No, it's called Replicas.
Replicas.
Yes.
And it's kind of a big pile of stink, but I couldn't stop watching. I kept watching the whole time going, Keanu Reeves kind of said yes to this, but it was also so over the top in its concept that I had to see how this was going to play out. You know what I mean?
Okay, much like Vin Diesel. Okay, Vin Diesel has the Fast and the Furious movies, so he's considered a massive movie star. But tell me any of the other movies outside of the Fast and Furious movies that have been big hits. The Last Witch Hunter. Now, I liked it because I'm a nerd, but it wasn't a success. I guess
Pitch
you could
Black.
say the Riddick movies were a moderate success amongst geeks.
Yeah.
But I don't think they broke out as far. And I love the Riddick movies, but not But what I'm trying to say is, outside of the Matrix and the John Wick movies, Keanu Reeves has taken a lot of weird chances in his career and has had a lot of films that have just flopped. Like he did this one I watched not too long ago. I think it was called Siberia, which is sort of like a weird, dreamy crime thriller he made a few years ago, which just didn't work. So for every huge hit he's had 2 or 3 films that just didn't work.
Yeah.
But I liked Replicas, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what I mean. It was like, I can't go and say it was a great movie, but it was kind of fun to watch.
I thought it was cool.
In its ridiculousness.
It reminded me of that Bruce Willis, Jonathan Mostow movie called Surrogates that came out in the early 2000s, that early 2000s Bruce Willis, when he was doing weird sci-fi action movies. It's sort of a very similar vibe to that movie. I kept thinking of when I watched it, but I thought Replicas was pretty good.
It had that sort of strong, sad string that it was pulling on you the whole time because he could only replicate most of his family, but not that one kid. His one daughter. He had to choose one not to do.
I like that.
And he had to erase the existence of his child.
I didn't remember that plot.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that was. And I remember I'm watching this stupid movie, and also I'm like, oh, I'm so sad.
Well, that's because you're a parent.
Well, I guess.
See, I don't have kids, so I. If you, I'm one of those people.
Off, huh?
If a dog dies in the movie, I'm sick in bed for a week.
I mean, even
but
in that Halloween movies,
I
have
care.
to say, Christian, they're not real dogs, right? They're not.
I've always
dog
said
wasn't hurt.
It's my one problem with Michael Myers is that he kills dogs and eats them, and he even eats rats. I'm not into that. Stop with that, Michael Myers. But when you're a parent, you view things in media differently. This stuff doesn't bother me. It doesn't trigger me. But I know a lot of things, like anything with kids getting sick or kids dying in a movie is very triggering to parents.
Yeah,
Maybe if I had kids, I have a dog. I want to shout out my dog. I have a Chihuahua named Wally.
Wally, you shouldn't be watching. It's too late.
I love you, Walter Cash White, my little man. Let me show you guys a picture of Walter.
Oh my God.
We're all friends here. Here, vamp for a second while I pull
Well,
out the
hey,
picture of Walter.
I don't even know why it popped in my head a second ago. I was thinking again of the Halloween Night Dance comics. Because you were talking about him, how he eating the rats. There's this great scene in the comic where Michael's supposed to be, oh, Walter.
Why is it blurry, damn it?
It's just because it's trying to grab it and it's too close. And right there,
I hope the cuteness. Now he's just fading away into oblivion.
There goes our tech savviness.
Now he looks horrible. He looks like he fell into the Superman, the negative zone.
Yeah, that's when you went to the nuclear plant and for your field trip. A little blown out.
Well, he's a little black and white Chihuahua. He's 14 years old. God bless him.
But
I sleep in bed with him every night, and I love him.
Oh God.
Love him. He's the only one who.
I was gonna actually do a bit where I was gonna put a number up every time you talked about Danielle Harris tonight. I thought it, but it didn't really come up. I'm proud of you.
I'm
You
glad you reminded me, though.
you kept it in line.
There's two people out there in this world that I love, and that's Danielle Harris and Lauren Lavera. Lauren Lavera, if you're listening to this, which I doubt you are because you got better things to do, like making Terrifier 3 and 4 and 5 and 7 and 9 and 11. But I love you with all my heart. Danielle Harris, I put my let me find that picture.
Oh my God.
We're showing pictures. Let me find
Hey,
it.
while he's looking for the picture really quick, I'm going to put up the info again if anybody wants to enter the giveaway for the Blu-ray sets, or we've got these fancy Haddonfield radio stickers. Look, no,
Why can't you see pictures?
Because it's a screen on a screen.
Oh, that's a
I have to
picture of
teach you
me.
everything.
That's a picture of me with my arm around Danielle Harris.
But anyway, if you want to enter, please do. You must be a subscriber, and tomorrow night I will be doing the drawing for 3 lucky winners. Winner 1 gets the DVDs. The other 2 will get some Haddonfield Radio swag, which is probably the better gift.
Yeah,
I
we've
don't
got a
know.
lot of cool
I don't
stuff
know.
in the Haddonfield
Anyway.
Radio merch. We do have a
We're,
lot.
we're
and
trying to
and
get
it's-
it slowly out to people.
There's like 300 boxes of it cluttering up this basement here we're in right now. So
man.
please take it.
We're working on
Please.
it. If you guys, seriously though, if anyone is interested in anything, email us at myersradio@yahoo.com, and I will tell you how we can get it into your hands.
I just want to say hello to Johnny P. Johnny P, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us. Johnny P says Johnny Mnemonic is one of my favorites of Keanu Reeves. I love Johnny Mnemonic, and I love the director was named Robert Longo, and I'm really going back in my memory banks here, but I believe he was like a visual artist, like a Basquiat style, like pop artist, and he made that movie, and it's sort of a thinly veiled version of Neuromancer by William Gibson. Maybe they couldn't get the rights. I can't quite remember, but I love Johnny Mnemonic. Has a very weird Ice-T. You know what always reminds me of another movie with Ice-T is Tank Girl.
I was just gonna say, wow, Tank
How about
Girl.
Tank Girl? How about that? Where's that resurgence? Let's
Wow.
remake Tank Girl.
I don't-
Hollywood.
I don't know if you can find some good in that one. I didn't never cared for Tank Girl. I couldn't. I don't mind the comics. I didn't think it was a successful translation, especially the.
Lori
Ice-T
Petty
bits.
was the actress that played Tank Girl.
She was. It was. It
And there
was
like
everything
kangaroo
else.
people. And
The kangaroo people didn't. Yeah. Anyway, let's not go on about Tank
Do you
Girl.
guys are any of you guys into the Mad Max movies? I would love to do a YouTube series just going through all the Mad Max movies.
Isn't there another one?
The trailer for the new one, the 5th film by George Miller called Furiosa, which is sort of a prequel to
Yeah.
Fury Road,
Yeah.
which was the 4th Mad Max film, which was really the masterpiece. And I mean, they're all great, but and I have a soft spot
He
for
kinda
Beyond
like-
Thunderdome, but
well,
Fury Road is just an action masterpiece.
he
Maybe
kind
the
of
greatest
condensed all
masterpiece.
his greatest thoughts of that
Right.
world into that movie, right?
I want to throw a theory out there if you've watched Mad Max Fury Road. I love this. It's not my original theory, but I love this theory that Tom Hardy is not actually playing Mad Max. He actually is the feral kid from the Road Warrior who just adopted the name Mad Max because Mad Max was sort of like a father figure to him. But that Mel Gibson still is Mad Max in that world.
That there will be many Mad Maxes sort of over time.
Well, no, it's just Mad Max is always Mad Max Rockatansky, Mad Max. Mel Gibson is Mad Max.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy that you see in Fury Road is calling himself Mad Max because he's taken the name.
Right.
But he's actually the feral kid from the Road Warrior. I just freaking love that theory.
That's an
I
interesting
hope
one.
that theory's true because that's such a cool theory. And even when you see the characterization that Tom Hardy brings to Mad Max, it doesn't feel anything like Mad Max. So, and I loved it. And I love that movie. I think it's the action classic of the 21st century, Fury Road. I'm very excited for Furiosa. It looks a little CGI heavy to me, at least from the teaser. But, I mean, I love Anya Taylor-Joy. And I'm curious to see Chris Hemsworth working with George Miller. Again, you were saying earlier, there's so many things we could do with Haddonfield Radio, so many movie series. I love the Terminator series, the Alien series.
all the hit 80s
the
franchises,
Predator,
you know. I mean,
but Mad Max, I'm telling you, I'd love to do the fan commentaries on all those movies. I would love to. Yeah, if you guys ever have thoughts as to what you'd like us to cover in the future, Throw them out there.
I think we should do maybe after Nightmare at some point. I do think Friday the 13th has to be coming up soon. We get a lot
in terms of being a completist.
We get a lot of requests, and obviously to do the big three, right? Although you kind of want to say big four because you want to throw Texas in there, Texas Chainsaw. But anyway.
But doing Freddy, Jason, and Michael is just.
But I think it would be really cool.
You kind of have to do it.
To do a season though, maybe where it's just it's not a franchise. Our whole season is our one-offs.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean.
I would be down with that because there's just so many.
Maybe
things
with a certain frame of a time period or something like that, we keep it in. But
I know we're coming to the end of the live stream. Yeah, but I just want to say what made me think earlier. I watched. If you guys want to see something really cool, it's not horror, of course, but James Cameron finally just released, and Lightstorm Entertainment just released The Abyss in 4K. I watched it on iTunes, but there is a physical media version of it. Also, True Lies, finally, he's released in 4K.
Yeah.
The 4K version of The Abyss is amazing.
That was a great movie.
Beautiful. It's one of his most underappreciated films. I love The Abyss. And as I was watching it, I texted Joe and said, man, I would love to talk about the James Cameron movie.
It's just classic Cameron on so many levels. Some big ideas, some new stuff, some new groundbreaking effects. It was weird. You brought it up, and I had just read an interview with Ed Harris talking about that movie, and he was talking about the fact that he won't talk about his time on the movie.
Yeah, it was such a horrible experience.
It was, and it was all the underwater stuff. There was just a lot of close drownings. There was a lot of training.
Oh, it's
crazy training.
The lore of that movie is worth covering.
And
on YouTube.
He himself, I think, logged the most.
Yep.
Like underwater hours and stuff. So yeah, he had a tough time, and we just won't talk about it.
Spooky Halloween Gal asked a very interesting question. Would you ever consider a non-horror franchise like Star Wars? We've mentioned it, I think, tangentially on Haddonfield Radio, but Joe is a Star Wars super fan. As if you even look behind him right now, there's a Jawa sitting there. I wish you could see all the Star Wars creations Joe's built.
It's literally like a sand crawler down here. There's so many droids, broken parts of droids, stormtrooper helmets, moisture evaporators, you name it.
Joe's even literally connected to Lucasfilm through his artistry in creating these.
I did a few jobs for them with my R2. It's not.
He created a real R2D2. That's literally the exact working replica from the movies. That's, I think, even better than the one they're using on the TV series now.
Well, I think, yes, I would love to do a Star Wars commentary. I probably have too much to say. I don't know how I'd get it all out.
That's the thing, right? It's like a lifetime of information.
It would be cool to do. Hey, we're always slowly expanding and doing more and more with the show, with the channel together, and who knows what's gonna come down the line.
Yeah, Joe and I are not just horror fans. We love movies. I grew up 80s and 90s horror kid, but I just love movies, and so does Joe. And I would be interested in doing all different. Maybe Haddonfield Radio may always stay horror related, but I could see us maybe even launching a second channel that we cover other kinds of films. Yeah. I don't know if that's something you guys would follow us over to and check that out too. But generally, I think most people that love horror movies just love movies. So yeah, but doing the same type of thing, just talking about movies and with you guys. That's all.
Anyway, here we are. It's 10 o'clock. That was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I love these live streams. Huh? I love doing this like podcast style, talk radio style, and most of anything, more than anything. I just love hanging out with you guys. And for all of you guys that are watching this in the future, that are tuning into this after it was live, we love you too.
Yes.
We love every single one of you. If you're taking time out of your busy life and your busy schedule to support our creativity, we love you. We sincerely do. And we appreciate all of you guys. Midwest Villain Z, Spooky Halloween Gal, H83 Electric, John E.P., Jose Padilla.
I want Andrew S. Boston. I wanted to say
Bryce,
hello to.
Hello,
good job out there with school. And
Andrew S. Boston's going to become a dentist. He's been working very, very hard to get there. We love you, and we support you. And
he uses our show as his incentive to treat himself after he gets to his exams. And I'm always saying to him, like, I bet what he must see in people's mouths must be more horrifying than the movies we talk about.
And if you notice the artwork that was at the beginning of this live stream, the Freddy Krueger holding the
The
he's
Santa
like,
Freddy.
like the Santa Freddy, or
Yeah.
somebody called him Santa Claus,
Yeah.
Claws, in the comments, which is really clever. That was done by the artist that did a lot of our season 1 artwork, Mark Putenis.
Yes.
And he has an Instagram page that's really cool, Trader_Duck.
If anybody happens to be into the whole tiki mug thing world, the tiki bar thing, he creates all these amazing art pieces of usable tiki mugs that he designs, and he's an amazing artist, and he helps us out with all of our art. So thank you to Mark.
Yeah, thank you so much. The artwork you do, he does it out of the kindness of his heart for us. He doesn't really get anything out of it. He does it just because, he loves movies, and he's just such a great digital artist, and we really, really sincerely appreciate it. And it would be really appreciative if you guys went and checked out his Instagram. Give him a follow.
He played Chewbacca in the Star Wars groups that I'm
There you
a
go.
part of.
Another
So
Star Wars
that's how I know
super
him,
fan.
because he cosplays as Chewbacca.
Well, yeah, so we love you guys, and we'll be back. The next thing we'll be doing that you'll see on Haddonfield Radio will be episode 6 of the Haddonfield Radio Trailer Park.
Yep.
Like we said earlier, we'll be talking about the trailers for 1981's Evil Dead.
We will be doing some interviews.
Yeah, we've got a lot.
Yeah.
We have a lot
Try
of
to set up
cool
some
stuff
cool
coming
interviews.
up. So we're going to be expanding the kind of the spectrum of the show, and I hope you guys, and we both hope you guys will join it and join us and like it and enjoy it. So if you like this content, just do us a favor and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And yeah, we love you guys. We love you guys with all our hearts.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing this time with us, and we hope you guys have very happy horror days. We
Yes.
love all you guys.
For everyone has holiday festivities coming up, enjoy. We will see you guys
We love
after
you.
the new year. Thank you for the last year of listening and hanging out with us. It has been a pleasure.
We love you. We'll see you next time. My name's Christian White.
And I'm Joe Francazio.